and another one asked me if I was drunk and high. So, you get you go off Twitter, you think, you hear, think, oh, everyone's going to go zero RB. That's going to make running backs a value. But actually, I haven't seen too many people really embracing the zero running back strategy as much as people talk like they will. Even in our home league draft yesterday, I was technically the only team that went zero RB. Typically, that's defined as avoiding running backs within the first 6 rounds. And I believe two other teams besides myself went pretty far, but the other 2 teams actually drafted a running back in the 5th, so that technically wouldn't be what you consider a zero RB draft. But what about you, Brian? Are you seeing zero running back a lot in all of your leagues?
A little bit. I mean, we're in a lot of leagues together, and you did a lot of zero RBs, so I see it in every league we do together. But it's definitely a rising trend. You see it on social media, on Twitter all the time, people talking about zero RB. I prefer the best player available method. I just kind of look at the board and I say, okay, who's going to score the most points this year? And that's usually who I'll take. Now, I usually tweak that. I don't like taking a running back in the first round or the second round, really. Although I did take one in the second round yesterday. I took Lamar Miller with, 210, I think, or I was 209. And I just took him because he fell all the way down the second round, and he's usually a first-round pick. But will you explain your thought process with the zero RB? Why are you taking at least 6 wide receivers in leagues where you can really only start up to 3 or 4 wide receivers? You're drafting players that are going to be on your bench before you draft players that running backs that you have to plug and play every week.
Yeah, and actually, this is the first year I've gone full zero running back. Last year I think I'd went like 3 rounds with wide receivers, but I fully embraced it this year. The reason why, actually, I was always a value-based drafter, just like you. I took who I thought would score the most points at that particular point in the draft. And the reason why I've kind of, gone away towards that is I've looked at my drafts from previous years, and I've realized that I'm really not as smart as I think I am. Most of the time, the players that I thought would score the most points didn't. They either got injured, they lost their jobs, something happened. So that value-based drafting hasn't really been successful for me in the past. So the whole point of zero running back is to take, basically it's creating an anti-fragile lineup and team. So zero running back, the whole point is never to have the sexiest team in your league. I don't think right out the bat, zero running back teams aren't made to necessarily be the strongest team in week 1. You're building, when you take 6 wide receivers in the first 6 rounds, you're basically building a foundation for your team that can withstand, again, the rigors of a 13-week season that we have in fantasy. So traditionally, wide receivers stay healthier, and it's harder for them to lose their jobs on the depth chart than it is for running backs. Running backs, they're famously the most, they get hurt. And again, it seems like there's a lot more turnover at the position in regards to starting jobs for running backs. So the whole point is to spend high capital draft picks on wide receivers because they're technically considered to be safer. And of course, there's room for error. I usually, when you take 4 or 6 running backs, 4 or 6 wide receivers, again, you're building, just in case those wide receivers get hurt or again they're ineffective, it builds you that bedrock. And what I've seen when I go zero running back is I'm still getting quality running backs in the later rounds. Even yesterday in our home league, trying to think, I believe I got
I'm looking at your team right now. Actually, you have Jeremy Langford and Ryan Matthews in your starting lineup right now, with Sean Drawn, Frank Gore, Christine Michael, and that rounds out your running back.
Yeah,
board.
I mean, there's a couple guys we're going to talk about later, so I won't dive into them too much right now. But even the fact that I got Jeremy Langford and you said, who is my second starting running back? Ryan Matthews. Those are both guys who they're both starting running backs, and they're guys I'm really. When I got Jeremy Langford, I think I got him in the 7th round. He was the first running back I took after I finished my wide receiver 6 start, and there's almost zero running back. What I've seen in most of my drafts is I've kind of been able to prey of people's insecurities about those backs. Like Ryan Matthews has this reputation as a guy that is injury prone, quote unquote. But I mean, when Brian Matthews is on the field, he's so productive. His talent has never been questioned, and he's a guy where if he doesn't get hurt, he's going to probably turn easily a top 24 season for my team, if not better. Even Jeremy Langford is a guy who there's talent. There's perceptions about his talent where that's still to be determined. But again, he's the unquestioned leader in that backfield. There was rumors, speculation I should say, that Jordan Howard would challenge Jeremy Langford this season. But nothing's really come of that. So there's little to no competition for Langford in Chicago. And even Ryan Matthews, everyone was talking about Wendell Smallwood. I haven't heard anything about him since preseason started, and actually I think he went out with a concussion the other day. I believe it was Friday. So again, these are two guys who I got in the 7th and 8th round, and I'd almost argue that they're better picks than some of the running backs I saw go 2 or 3 rounds earlier. So again, zero running back is never going to give you the sexiest team, but that's usually the best way to withstand season-long, things that you just can't predict. Again, if anything happens to Ryan Matthews or Jeremy Langford, I didn't spend a lot of capital on them, so my team, in theory, should be able to better withstand that blow than it would be if I spent a second-round pick on a running back that might have went down with injury.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you're minimizing your risk there, which is the important thing. Especially now, everybody leans towards these PPR leagues. I don't know really many leagues now that are just standard, because it's more exciting with PPR. You get more points, the scores are higher, but and you also see more year-to-year rises and falls with running backs. Like Devonta Freeman last year finishing as the number 1 overall running back in PPR leagues. Nobody was drafting him in the top 2 or 3 rounds. He was a late round pick, and he blew up, and he won a lot of people a lot of leagues.
Yeah, and actually targeting the pass catching running back out of running back by committees is one of the strategies for zero running backs. So if you targeted a guy like Devonta Freeman, obviously you probably won your league. And another popular target would have been Charles Sims. And that's this year I'm targeting guys like Chris Thompson, Sean Drawn. Again, these are guys who they don't necessarily seem like the sexiest pick, but they catch passes out of the backfield. And they don't necessarily rely on the success of the guy ahead of them to be productive. I'd argue, I believe Matt Jones went down with an injury this weekend. That really doesn't have any effect on Chris Thompson.
His role is going to stay the same.
And so when I spend picks on these, again, these are guys that I'll be targeting in the hope that you're not going to get Devonta Freeman every year. Devonta Freeman doesn't happen every year, but if you can get lucky and get a guy like Charles Sims, who will be who will return RB2 value and be a good pick for your zero running back team. First, we're going to talk about Kevin White. Kevin White has been struggling to say the least.
He's done nothing.
Yeah, he had a game this weekend. I believe it was yesterday. According to the Roto, Kevin White caught 1 of 4 targets for 3 yards Saturday against the Chiefs. He dropped a screen pass in the third quarter and then ran what looked like a bad route on the next play. According to the Roto World, he's yet to top 1 catch or 6 yards in a game this preseason. Has been limited to mostly screen passes. They think it looks like he still has a long way to go, but his upside is worth the risk in the 8th round. Now,
no, it's not. It's
Brian,
not.
I have a really curious stat for you here. Check this out. Adam Levitin, formerly of Roto World, he actually tweeted this out a bit earlier tonight. He says Kevin White has played 71 snaps this season, most of them with Cutler. He has 3 catches, 12 yards, and 0 touchdown. He's Pro Football Focus's number 213 wide receiver out of 219 qualifiers.
213th out of 219. Yes. Let those numbers sink in, ladies and gentlemen. That's insane.
Fantasy community has taken note of this by continuing to draft Kevin White in the first 8 rounds.
Because he's still a big name for some
According to
reason.
Fantasy Football Calculator, Kevin White has an ADP of 806. So just think about that. Kevin White has an ADP in the first 8 rounds. Even yesterday in our home league, we saw Kevin White go in the 8th round by someone who does know what they're doing. They consciously took Kevin White. Now, Brian, you and me had some discussion about Kevin White on the last or the last podcast. I'm guessing by how you were talking, it seems like you might have reassessed your evaluation of Kevin White for the 2016 season.
Yeah, I'm still hopeful. I wouldn't take him in the 8th round. I definitely had him the highest on our rankings on superfantasybros.com, and I'm probably gonna have to readjust that after this week. But even when he came out, we were evaluating him last year in Dynasty. He's one of the players that I really actually avoid, and the main reason that is he only had one big successful year. So he was in JUCO, junior college, so he came up through the ranks late. His junior year at West Virginia, he only caught 35 balls for 507 yards and 5 touchdowns. And then in 2014, he blew up with almost 1,500 yards on 109 catches and 10 touchdowns. So that's one of those red flags that he came up late, came through. He came into the draft older than most other prospects, and he only produced 1 year. So there's not a lot of history that says he's a productive wide receiver. Now maybe our buddy in the 30 team league might disagree with us. But especially when you're looking at young players entering the NFL and that are, first and second year in, I'm still looking at those college stats. They're still important to me.
Yeah, I did talk about that. I didn't like him because he was an older prospect. That was a huge red flag for me. And honestly, I can see why some people like him. He's a beast, supposedly. I know he had a great combine. But the fact of the matter is, Kevin White is being taken over. Guys he's getting taken over Stephon Diggs, Willie Snead,
Tyler Eifert.
Tyler Eifert, and he just started jogging
he's hurt,
yesterday. But even for just wide receivers, even a guy like Devin Funchess. Now, I don't understand why people. I'd almost call it, again. It's like the 2017 first dilemma where. I just don't. I'm having a really hard time comprehending why people continue drafting Kevin White, especially for someone like Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs, who I say this a lot, but before the 2014 wide receiver class changed the game. Before the 2014 class, most of the time you gave wide receivers. They always said there was the 3-year breakout that was coming, where if the guy didn't perform in his first or second year, that's what was supposed to happen. The third year is when he came on, learned the position, and really took off for your fantasy team. A guy like Stephon Diggs, if he would have happened, I'd say even 4 or 5 years ago, again before that 2014 class, I feel like he's a guy that'd be getting drafted in the 4th or 5th round. You wouldn't be able to get him so low. He's one of my favorite targets this year, and I think it's crazy that people are off of him because, again, I don't think people realize how good he is. He had a really productive rookie season, and he was a really productive college player as well. So for people to draft someone like Kevin White, who it's just making my brain hurt, Brian. I'm going to try to go on, but I don't know if I can. I just don't get it.
No, I totally agree. Stephon Diggs finished last year as the wide receiver 46. He didn't play in the first 3 games, or he didn't accrue any stats. But week 4, he had a bye week in week 5. Week 6, 7, and 8. He had 14.7 points, 19.9 points, 23.7, and 21.5 points. So those are all big weeks. Now he cooled off later on in the season, and that's why people really don't remember him. There's that recency bias where if you remember, in your playoffs and you started Diggs as your wide receiver 3 and he got you 5.9 points in your championship game, you're going to say, well, that guy sucks. But this guy was a 5-star high school recruit. He went to Maryland. People forgot about him because he was derailed by injury, and I know that's something that we all kind of look at when we're evaluating players, and okay, well, this guy